Chapter 1. The first thing I notice is the smell. Burnt sugar. Not sweet. Not exactly. More like something that used to be sweet before someone left it too long on the fire. My lungs lock. That smell does not belong to a normal alpha. I'm already moving before my brain catches up. The hallway lights in the mansion flicker once, just once, and then the silence drops back into place like nothing happened. My boots barely make sound against the polished floor. Years of training. Years of pretending to be smaller than I am. Behind the heavy oak door at the end of the corridor, something crashes. Blast. Then breathing. Not normal breathing. Too deep. Too rough. I know that sound. An alpha losing control. My hand pauses on the door handle. Cold metal against my palm. I shouldn't go in. A beta bodyguard would wait for orders. A beta bodyguard would knock. A beta bodyguard would pretend he doesn't feel the pheromones leaking through the cracks in the door. But I'm not a beta. And the scent pouring out of that room is already crawling under my skin. Wrong. So wrong. Another crash. Then his voice. Oh. Broken. Almost a growl. Don't come in. David. The most feared alpha in the city. The man I was sent here to watch. The man who might be responsible for the deaths of 6 mafia leaders. My fingers tighten around the handle. Inside the room something heavy hits the wall hard enough that the frame rattles. Then silence. A horrible silence. The kind that means someone inside might already be dead. I open the door. Slow. The soft click of the latch sounds impossibly loud in the dark room. The smell hits me first. God. My chest tightens. That scent is not alpha dominance. Not omega heat. It's something else. Something predatory. Like ozone before lightning. David stands across the room with one hand braced against the wall. His back is to me. Black shirt clinging to his shoulders with sweat. The window is open but the curtains barely move. He's breathing like he just ran 10 miles. Get out, he says. Not loud. But the words scrape the air. I step inside anyway. Because that smell, it's tearing through my suppressants like they're paper. And if I can feel it, other alphas would go insane. My voice comes out calm. Neutral. Beta calm. You're injured, boss. He laughs. It's not a pleasant sound. You think this is an injury? Another inhale. His shoulders tighten. Then slowly he turns around. And for 1 second, just one. His eyes are not human. My pulse stutters. Dark. Too dark. Like something is looking out through him instead of the other way around. I've studied files on abnormal alpha variants. I've seen recordings. But seeing it in person, that moment when pheromones twist into something alive, it makes the back of my neck prickle. He doesn't notice. He's too busy fighting himself. Lambert, he says my name rough in his throat. You should not be in this room. My job is to protect him. My real job is to decide if he deserves to live. I walk closer. 1 step. Then another. The scent thickens. It presses against my ribs. He smells like smoke after rain. Like iron. Like something ancient. His hand tightens against the wall. Don't, he says quietly. But it's not a command. It's a warning. To me. Or maybe to himself. That's when I realize something strange. The closer I get, the calmer his breathing becomes. Just slightly. Barely noticeable. But I notice. Because noticing small things is how I stay alive. He notices too. His head tilts. Eyes narrowing. You're not reacting. I shrug. The beta act. The calm bodyguard who doesn't feel pheromones. I'm used to alphas. His jaw tightens. He pushes away from the wall. Walks toward me slowly. His step heavy. Measured. The room feels smaller with him moving. Everyone reacts to me, he says quietly. His voice drops lower. You don't. I don't answer. Because if I open my mouth right now, he might smell the truth. He stops in front of me. Close. Too close. The heat of him reaches my skin through the air. I can hear the fabric of his shirt shift when he breathes. A slow inhale. Then another. His eyes search my face like he's trying to solve a puzzle. Tell me something, Lambert. My pulse hits once. Art. Yes, boss. His fingers flex once at his side. If you were an alpha. His voice pauses. Would my scent bother you? The question hangs between us. Sure. Dangerous. Because if I answer wrong, everything ends tonight. I keep my voice steady. I wouldn't know. Silence. Long enough for me to hear the distant hum of the mansion's air system. Long enough for me to hear his heartbeat. Slow. Heavy. He leans closer. Not touching. Just close enough that his breath brushes the side of my neck. And then, for the first time since I took this job, his scent changes. It softens. Not much, but enough that the pressure in the room eases. His voice drops to a whisper. You're strange, Lambert. I don't move, because if I move, my control might crack. And if my scent leaks even a little, the lie I've been living inside this mansion will collapse. He studies me for another moment, then steps back. The distance returns like air after drowning. Leave, he says quietly. His composure is returning. The alpha mask sliding back into place. I turn toward the door, but just before I step out, I hear him say something under his breath. So quiet I almost miss it. Why does my scent calm down around you? I close the door softly. The hallway feels colder, safer. But my hands are still shaking, because I know what I just confirmed. David's pheromones aren't normal. They're unstable. And if the reports are right, he could kill every alpha in this city without even touching them. Which means my mission just became very simple. Protect him, until I'm sure, and then eliminate him. The problem is, when he stood close enough for his breath to touch my neck, something inside my chest didn't feel like a mission anymore. It felt like a mistake I was already making. And that's the part that should scare me. Because what happens next is the moment everything changes. Welcome to the BL Story Room. Subscribe so you don't miss what he does to me. 3 weeks earlier, I was still pretending to be a beta. And David still believed it. Which meant he let me stand closer to him than anyone else in the world. And looking back, that was the first mistake either of us made. Chapter 2. The first time David looked at me like I mattered, I should have walked away. Instead, I tightened my tie and stepped into his office like I belonged there. The door shut behind me with a quiet click. Sound carries strangely in that room. The walls are thick, the kind that keep secrets in. David sits behind a wide black desk. No guards inside. No advisors. Just him. The most powerful alpha in the city pretending he doesn't need protection. His eyes lift slowly when I enter. Dark. Sharp. Assessing. I can feel the weight of it immediately. Alphas like him are used to measuring people in seconds. Predator instinct. Friend. Enemy. Threat. Prey. He studies me like he's trying to decide which one I am. What's your name again? He asks. His voice is calm. Controlled. But there's something under it. Something coiled. Lambert. Beta? I nod once. A lie I've been practicing for 6 years. Yes, sir. He leans back slightly in his chair, watching me. His scent is faint today. Almost non-existent. Which is strange. Most Mafia Alphas flood rooms with pheromones on purpose. Dominance displays. Power rituals. David keeps his scent restrained. Like he's afraid of it. Or ashamed of it. His fingers tap once on the desk. You don't look like a bodyguard. I shrug. What does a bodyguard look like? His mouth twitches slightly. Not quite a smile. Bigger. I'm efficient. Silence. He studies me again. Longer this time. Then suddenly, he stands. The chair slides back with a soft scrape. My muscles tense automatically. He walks around the desk slowly. Not threatening, but very aware of the space between us. 3 steps. 2. 1. Then he stops right in front of me. Close enough that I can hear the quiet shift of his breathing. He leans slightly closer. Testing. Waiting for a reaction. Most betas would feel uncomfortable with an alpha standing this near. But they wouldn't know why. They just feel pressure. Dominance. But I know exactly what he's doing. He's scent checking me. Trying to see if I react. My suppressants burn in the back of my throat. Holding my pheromones down. Keeping the truth buried. David inhales slowly. Then again. His brow creases. That's strange. I keep my face neutral. What is? You don't smell like anything. Good. That's the point. Betas usually have faint scents. Humans do. But my suppressants strip mine completely. It's the only way an alpha can hide among them. He tilts his head slightly. You're calm. I get paid to be. His eyes flick down my body once. Not lust. Assessment. But it lingers a second too long. You've worked for mafia families before? Yes. Which ones? None you liked. That earns me the smallest laugh. A short exhale. He steps back. Distance returns. You're hired. Just like that. No paperwork. No contract. Just instinct. Because in David's world, trust is either immediate, or it never comes. I bow my head slightly. Understood. As I turn toward the door, he says something that stops me. You're not afraid of me. It's not a question. I glance back. He's watching me carefully. I shrug again. I'm afraid of bullets. Another pause. Then he says quietly, good answer. I leave the office. But the moment the door closes behind me, my chest tightens. Because what he said was true. I wasn't afraid of him. Not yet. But that would change. So, because I didn't understand then what I understand now. David wasn't hiding his scent because he was disciplined. He was hiding it because he was terrified of what would happen if he didn't. And the next time his control breaks, I'll be the one standing closest to the explosion. Stay with me because this next part is the one people always come back to. Chapter 3. The first time David trusted me enough to sleep, I almost killed him. Not with a weapon. Not with a plan. Just by standing too close. It was past midnight when the mansion finally went quiet. Not silent. Nothing in a mafia house is ever silent. There's always something. A distant door closing, quiet footsteps from guards changing shifts, the soft electric hum of cameras rotating in the corners of hallways. But the chaos of the day had faded. No visitors. No meetings. No arguments in the courtyard. Just the long, heavy quiet that comes after power settles for the night. I stood outside David's bedroom door with my hands folded behind my back. So, patient. Listening. The hallway smelled faintly like lemon polish and cold marble. The kind of smell expensive houses always have. Clean. Controlled. Artificial. The door opened without warning. The soft click made my shoulders tense automatically. David stepped out. His shirt sleeves were rolled up to his elbows. Tie gone. The top 2 buttons of his shirt undone like he'd been fighting with them and lost patience halfway through. His hair was still slightly damp. Shower. But even over the soap and steam, I could smell him. Something deep and heavy. Like rain hitting hot pavement. He stopped when he saw me. You're still here. I didn't move. I'm on night watch. You've been here 6 hours. Yes. A quiet breath escaped his nose. Not quite irritation. More like confusion. You don't sleep? When I'm off shift. He studied me for a moment. The hallway light caught in his eyes strangely. They looked darker at night. Come inside. That was unusual. Bodyguards rarely enter the private rooms of mafia bosses. Too much vulnerability. Too much risk. But I nodded once and followed him in. The room was large. Too large for one person. A king bed against the far wall. Dark wood furniture. Floor-to-ceiling windows looking over the city. But the first thing that hit me wasn't the size. It was the smell. David's scent lived in this room. Not strong. But everywhere. Like warmth that never fully left the air. My chest tightened slightly. Suppressants held the reaction down, but not perfectly. David crossed the room slowly. You can sit. I'm fine standing. That wasn't a request. I sat. One of the armchairs near the window. David loosened his cuffs and tossed them on the dresser. The quiet clink of metal sounded louder than it should. For a few seconds neither of us spoke. Then he asked, do betas ever feel intimidated by alphas? The question caught me slightly off guard. Sometimes. Not you. No. Why? I thought about lying. Then decided honesty was easier. Because intimidation doesn't stop bullets. He stared at me. Longer than necessary. Then something strange happened. He smiled. Not the polite mafia smile he used with politicians. A real one. Small. Brief. But real. You're the strangest bodyguard I've ever hired. I hear that a lot. Another silence settled between us. The air conditioning hummed quietly above. The city lights flickered through the glass. Then David moved toward the bed. Not to sleep. Just to sit on the edge. His elbows rested on his knees. Hands hanging loosely between them. His shoulders looked heavier tonight. Like something had been pressing down on them all day. You ever wonder what it's like, he said quietly, to run a place like this? I didn't answer immediately. Dangerous. He huffed softly. Lonely. That word hung in the air. Lonely. Not something powerful alphas usually admit out loud. He rubbed the back of his neck slowly. Everyone in this house reacts to me. Reacts how? They're careful with their breathing. That answer surprised me. What do you mean? He glanced toward me. You ever noticed how people inhaled differently around me? I hadn't. Or rather, I had noticed something else. People avoided breathing deeply around him. Like their instincts were warning them. They're afraid of you, I said. Not afraid. His voice softened. Controlled. He leaned back slightly, looking up at the ceiling. Alphas dominate rooms just by existing. Betas and omegas feel it in their bones. Then his eyes slid toward me again. But you don't. I shrugged. I'm hard to impress. That earned a quiet laugh. The sound echoed softly off the high ceiling. Then suddenly, he exhaled. Long, tired, and lay back on the bed without bothering to change clothes. One arm resting over his eyes. For a moment I thought he was joking. But his breathing slowed almost immediately. Steady. Heavy. He was falling asleep. Right there. With me still in the room. I blinked. That was unusual. A Mafia Alpha sleeping with someone watching him was reckless. Trust like that wasn't given easily. And I hadn't earned it yet. Which meant something else was happening. I sat there quietly for several minutes. Listening. His breathing deepened. The soft rustle of fabric when his chest rose and fell. Outside, a distant car passed somewhere below the hill. Then, it happened. The smell changed. Not dramatically. Just slightly. But enough for my instincts to snap awake. David's pheromones were shifting again. Slow. Unstable. My muscles tightened. The same scent I smelled that night in the hallway. It was starting again. Burnt sweetness. Electric air. The beginning of a storm. My suppressants reacted immediately. A sharp chemical taste climbed up my throat. But it wasn't enough. My body was responding. Because that scent, it was calling to something inside me. Something alpha. I stood slowly, careful not to make noise. The wooden floor creaked softly under my weight. David shifted slightly in his sleep. A faint crease forming between his brows. His breathing changed. Faster. Like he was dreaming something unpleasant. The scent intensified. Just a little. But enough to confirm it. His pheromones weren't just unstable. They were reacting to something. Or someone. My pulse thudded once. Hard. I took one step back. The smell weakened slightly. I stepped forward again. It strengthened. My stomach dropped. No, that couldn't be right. I tested it again. Half a step closer. The scent thickened instantly. Like oxygen hitting a flame. My hands slowly curled into fists. Because that meant something very bad. David's pheromones weren't reacting randomly. They were reacting to me. More specifically, to my suppressed alpha scent. Even buried under chemicals. Even hidden under layers of lies. Some part of him could still sense it. On the bed David shifted again. His head turned slightly toward me in his sleep. And then, something impossible happened. The violent edge in his pheromones softened. Not completely. But enough that the air felt breathable again. My breath caught. I didn't move. Slowly. Very slowly. His breathing steadied. The crease between his brows disappeared. And within seconds, he was sleeping peacefully again. Because I was standing there. I stayed frozen in place. Heart pounding. Trying to understand what I had just witnessed. Every file I'd studied about abnormal alpha variants warned about aggression. Violence. Pheromone domination. But this was something different. My presence wasn't triggering David. It was stabilizing him. The realization hit me like ice water. That was true. Then my mission had just become 1,000 times more dangerous. Because if anyone discovered that the only thing keeping David stable was the scent of another alpha, then I wouldn't just be a bodyguard anymore. I'd be a target. I kept coming back to this part later. I don't know why. Maybe because it was the last quiet moment before everything started falling apart. Because 3 nights after that, the first alpha died. And when I saw the body, I knew exactly whose scent had killed him. I should have left then. I didn't. And that decision changed everything. Chapter 4. The first alpha died 3 nights later. I didn't see it happen. But I heard the scream. And once you hear something like that, you don't forget it. It was a little after 2 in the morning when my phone vibrated in my pocket. The mansion was asleep. Or pretending to be. Night in a mafia house is a strange thing. Guards walk softer. Doors close slower. Conversations happen in whispers like the walls might be listening. I was standing near the east corridor window watching the courtyard below. Cold air slipped through the cracked glass. It smelled like rain and car exhaust and the faint sweetness of the garden that someone had planted out there years ago before this place became a fortress. My phone buzzed again. Unknown number. I answered immediately. No greeting. Just breathing on the other side. Then a voice. Lambert. Oh, urgent. Director Hale. The man who recruited me. The man who knows I'm not a beta. Talk. You need to get to the West District warehouse. My stomach tightened. Why? Pause. Then he said something that made my spine go cold. We found another body. Another. Not the first. Not the second. Another. My voice stayed flat. Alpha? Yes. How bad? Silence. Then. You need to see it yourself. The call ended. Just like that. No explanation. No briefing. Just a location. Which meant it was bad. Bad enough they didn't want to risk saying it over the phone. I slipped out of the mansion 20 minutes later. No one stopped me. David trusted me enough by then that the guards barely questioned where I went during patrol shifts. That trust sat heavy in my chest tonight. Because the place I was going might prove that their boss was a monster. The warehouse sat near the docks. Old concrete. Rust stains crawling down the walls like dried blood. One flickering light above the entrance. I smelled the body before I even stepped inside. Metal. Sweat. And something sour that always comes when a nervous system shuts down wrong. 3 black cars were parked outside. Unmarked. Government. Inside the warehouse the lights were harsh and white. Too bright. The body lay in the center of the concrete floor. A man in an expensive gray suit. Early 40s. Broad shoulders. Alpha. Where he used to be. His face. I've seen gunshots. Knife wounds. Even explosions. But this was worse. His eyes were wide open. Not in pain. In terror. His veins stood out along his neck and temples like something inside him had tried to claw its way out. His mouth was frozen open mid-scream. Director Hale stood nearby with 2 other agents. He didn't greet me. Just stepped aside. Look. I crouched next to the body. Careful not to touch anything. But I didn't need to. I could already smell it. Faint. Almost gone. But unmistakable. Pheromones. Violent ones. Alpha pheromones. And not just any alpha. My throat went dry. Where did he die? Right here. Witnesses. 3 dock workers. What did they say? Hale's jaw tightened. They said he started screaming. I looked up slowly. Screaming. They said he dropped to his knees like something invisible hit him. A cold knot twisted in my stomach. And then? Hale exhaled slowly. Then he started clawing at his throat. The warehouse suddenly felt smaller. The fluorescent lights buzzed above us. That's not possible, one of the younger agents muttered behind me. I ignored him. Did they smell anything? Hale hesitated. Then nodded. They said the air smelled sweet. My fingers curled slightly. Burnt sugar. Lightning before a storm. David. I stood slowly. Who is he? Hale handed me a file. I didn't need to open it. I already knew the name. Victor Rinaldi. Alpha. Head of the Rinaldi Syndicate. One of the most dominant mafia families in the city. And 3 days ago, he had dinner with David. My chest felt tight suddenly. You think it's him? Hale said quietly. I didn't answer. Instead I stepped back toward the body again. Something was wrong. Something about the scene didn't match the reports I'd read about previous deaths. Those alphas had lost control gradually. Hours of instability before collapse. This one. It was instant. Like something triggered him. What time did he die? About 40 minutes ago. My eyes moved slowly around the warehouse. Concrete walls. Metal crates. Empty space. Then I felt it. Faint. Almost gone. But there. A ghost of scent in the air. My heart stuttered. That smell. It wasn't just alpha pheromones. It was David's pheromones. But weaker. Like an echo. Impossible. David wasn't here. He was across the city sleeping in his mansion. Which meant only one thing. Someone had brought his scent here. I turned slowly toward Hale. You said this alpha met David recently. 3 days ago. At the mansion? Yes. Private meeting? Yes. I nodded slowly, because now the pattern made sense. The victims weren't dying near David. They were dying after being exposed to something connected to him. Something that stayed inside them. Like a seed. Waiting. Lambert, Hale said carefully. You look like you just figured something out. Maybe I had. Maybe I hadn't. But one thing was certain. David wasn't killing these alphas intentionally. Someone else was using him. I stood up straight. When did the victims start acting strange? 1 hour ago. Before that. Normal. Any signs of pheromone instability? No. That confirmed it. The trigger was sudden. External. I walked slowly around the body. Then I saw it. A tiny mark on the man's neck. Almost invisible. Like a needle prick. My stomach dropped. Hale. Yes. Did medical check for injections. They said there was nothing. Look again. He frowned but crouched beside me. The younger agent handed him a small flashlight. Hale leaned closer. Then his expression changed. Damn. You see it? Yeah. Tiny. Precise. Professional. Someone injected him, Hale said quietly. But with what? I already knew the answer. Or at least part of it. David's pheromones. Condensed. Weaponized. Injected directly into another alpha's bloodstream. My pulse thudded hard. Because if that theory was right, then someone had figured out how to turn David into a biological weapon. And the worst part? David probably didn't even know. I straightened slowly. When was the last time anyone took samples from David? Hale looked confused. What do you mean? Blood tests. Medical exams. Anything. Why? Because someone might be stealing his pheromones. The warehouse went quiet. Even the buzzing lights seemed louder. That's impossible, the young agent said again. Pheromones degrade too quickly. Not if they're stabilized, I replied. How? I didn't answer. Because the real question wasn't how. It was who. And why. Hale watched me carefully. You think someone inside David's organization is doing this? Yes. And David doesn't know? No. Hale crossed his arms slowly. That's a big assumption. I looked down at the dead alpha again. The terror frozen on his face. The veins bulging in his neck. I've seen what happens when David loses control. Hale's eyes sharpened. And? He doesn't look like this. Silence stretched between us. Then Hale spoke quietly. If David is innocent. I finished the sentence for him. Then someone is trying to frame him. And if he's not? I didn't answer. Because the truth was, I didn't know anymore. 3 nights ago I watched David sleep peacefully because I was standing nearby. Tonight an alpha was dead from something that smelled exactly like him. Both things couldn't be true. But they were. Hale handed the file back to one of the agents. What's your next move? I thought about the mansion. About the quiet way David had fallen asleep while I sat in that chair. About the strange way his pheromones calmed around me. Something in my chest tightened. I go back. To watch him. To protect him. Hale's eyes narrowed. Or to kill him. I didn't answer that either. Because I honestly didn't know which one it would be yet. I left the warehouse an hour later. The sky had started to rain. Cold drops hitting the pavement like quiet footsteps. The drive back to the mansion felt longer than usual. Streetlights sliding across the windshield. My mind replaying the same question over and over. Who inside David's organization had access to him? Who could take his scent without him noticing? Who would want the Mafia Alphas dead? When I finally reached the mansion gates, something felt wrong immediately. The guards were tense. Too tense. Their hands resting near their guns. I rolled down the window. What happened? One of them leaned closer. Boss had another episode. My chest tightened instantly. When? 20 minutes ago. Where? Office. I parked before the engine even stopped running. The front doors opened as I ran inside. The mansion smelled different tonight. Heavy. Electric. Wrong. David's pheromones were everywhere. And they were unstable. The hallway lights flickered as I moved quickly toward his office. 2 guards stood outside the door. Both looked pale. He's still inside, one said. Anyone hurt? They exchanged a glance. No. But the way he said it made my stomach twist. I pushed the door open. The room was dark except for the desk lamp. David stood near the window. Back turned. Breathing slow. Too slow. like someone forcing themselves to stay calm. Boss. He didn't turn. For a long moment he said nothing. Then finally, Lambert. His voice sounded rough. Did you smell it too? My heart skipped. Smell what? The death. The word echoed softly in the room. Slowly he turned around. His eyes looked darker than usual. More tired. Someone died tonight. It wasn't a question. My pulse pounded. How do you know? He took a step closer. Then another. Because I felt it. Silence filled the office. Rain tapping softly against the window. You're hiding something from me, he said quietly. Every instinct in my body tightened. Because the way he was looking at me now, it wasn't suspicion. It was recognition. Like some part of him was finally starting to understand what I really was. He stopped a few feet away. Close enough that I could hear the shift of his breathing again. You don't react to my pheromones, he said slowly. Not like everyone else. I kept my face calm. I told you. I know what you told me. His eyes locked onto mine. Sure. Searching. And I know you lied. My heart slammed once against my ribs. Because if David discovered the truth now, everything would collapse. My cover. My mission. The fragile trust that had been forming between us. And the next words out of his mouth would decide which one of us walked out of this room alive. You need to hear what he said next. Because nothing prepared me for it. Chapter 5. You're not a beta. David said it quietly. Not accusing. Not angry. Just certain. For a second I honestly thought I misheard him. The rain outside tapped softly against the window behind him. The desk lamp cast a thin slice of light across his face, leaving the rest of the room in shadow. His eyes were darker than usual, like he hadn't slept in days. I didn't move. Didn't blink. Years of training held my body still. But inside my chest something slammed hard against my ribs. You're not a beta, he repeated. The air between us felt heavy. My first instinct was denial. Simple. Clean. Safe. But something in the way he was looking at me made the lie feel pointless. Still I tried. I took the standard genetic registration like everyone else, I said calmly. Beta classification. David exhaled slowly through his nose. Not convinced. Not surprised either. He walked past me toward the desk. He stepped slow. Measured. His fingers brushed against the wood surface before he leaned his weight there. Then he looked back at me. You know what strange thing happened tonight? He asked. I stayed silent. Victor Rinaldi died. My pulse jumped. So he knew already. News moved fast in Mafia circles. But the way he said it, like he'd been expecting it. People say he lost control, David continued quietly. Screaming. Clawing at his own throat. My stomach tightened. And the strange part, he said, eyes never leaving mine, is that I felt it happen. The room seemed to shrink. What do you mean? David tapped 2 fingers lightly against his chest. Right here. His voice dropped. Like something snapped. My mind raced. That shouldn't be possible. Unless the pheromone injection had created some kind of resonance. My silence lasted too long. David noticed. He always noticed. You knew about it before I told you. Not a question. A statement. I forced myself to breathe normally. I hear things. You heard this before anyone else? I have contacts. Another long silence. The rain outside grew heavier. The sound filled the gaps between our words. David pushed away from the desk and walked slowly toward me again. Closer. The air between us tightened. His scent was different tonight. Unstable. Sure. Like electricity waiting to strike. He stopped just a step away. Too close for comfort. His eyes dropped briefly to my throat. Then back to my face. Let me ask you something, Lambert? Yes. If you were lying to me, would you be good at it? I almost laughed. But the sound died before it reached my throat. I'd like to think so. His gaze lingered. Heavy. Assessing. Then suddenly he reached forward. Not fast. Not violent. Just a calm, deliberate movement. His hand closed around my tie. The fabric tightened slightly against my collar. My heart jumped. Not fear. Something else. Something far more dangerous. You wear too much scent blocker, he said softly. My stomach dropped. Bodyguards deal with omegas sometimes. That's not what this smells like. His fingers tightened slightly on the tie, pulling me half a step closer. The warmth of his body brushed the front of my chest. Too close. Way too close. My suppressants burned at the back of my throat. Chemical bitterness rising up my tongue. Because under his unstable pheromones, my alpha instincts were reacting. And if I lost control for even a second, the truth would explode out of me. David leaned slightly closer. His breath brushed the side of my jaw. "You smell like nothing," he murmured. "And that's the problem." My voice stayed steady somehow. "Is that illegal now?" He ignored the joke. His nose moved slightly. Inhaling again. My pulse thudded. Once. Twice. Hard. Because the longer he stood this close, the harder it became to keep my scent buried. "You don't react to me," he said quietly. "Everyone reacts to me. I'm disciplined. You're something." His eyes flicked to mine again. Sure. Searching. And then, for the first time since I met him, I saw doubt in David's expression. Not suspicion. Doubt. Like he was starting to question his own instincts. Slowly he released my tie. The tension in the fabric disappeared. I resisted the urge to step back. Because stepping back would look like guilt. Instead I stayed exactly where I was. Still. Calm. Controlled. David turned away from me, running a hand slowly through his hair. His shoulders looked tense. Tired. "You ever feel like something is wrong with you?" he asked quietly. The question surprised me. "What do you mean?" He walked toward the window again. Rain streaked down the glass behind him. "Like the world expects you to be something?" His voice trailed off, then continued softer. "And you're not sure you are?" I didn't answer, because the irony of that question sitting between us was almost unbearable. He glanced back at me. "You're a strange man, Lambert." "I've heard that before." "You make my head quieter." That sentence landed harder than anything else he'd said tonight. My chest tightened. "What does that mean?" "When you're around," he said slowly, "the noise stops." "What noise?" David hesitated, like he was debating whether to say it out loud. Then finally, "My instincts." The room went silent, because what he just admitted was something no alpha boss would ever confess. Instinct is everything to men like him. Power, dominance, violence. If his instincts were quiet around me, then something deeper was happening. Something dangerous. David leaned one shoulder against the window, looking tired again. "You want to know something funny?" "What?" "I hired you because you didn't react to me." His eyes met mine again. "And now I'm starting to wonder if that's the most dangerous thing about you." My pulse thudded again. Heavy. Because he was closer to the truth than he realized. I should have left then. I should have requested reassignment. But I didn't. Instead I said something incredibly stupid. "What makes you think I'm dangerous?" David's mouth twitched slightly. "You stand in rooms with men who could kill you and you never flinch. That's my job." "No," he said softly. "That's not fearlessness." A small pause. "That's something else." He walked back toward me slowly. Each step measured. The room felt warmer suddenly. Or maybe that was just my pulse. "You know what I think, Lambert?" "What?" "I think you're hiding something." My jaw tightened slightly. "And I think," he continued, stopping just inches away again, "you're very good at it." His hand lifted slowly. For a terrifying moment I thought he was about to grab my throat. Instead his fingers brushed lightly against the side of my collar, adjusting it. A small gesture. Soft. Unexpected. But the warmth of his touch lingered longer than it should. My lungs forgot how to breathe. He noticed. Of course he noticed. His eyes sharpened slightly. "There it is." "What?" "A reaction." "Damn." I forced my shoulders to relax. "You were standing too close." His gaze stayed locked on me. Long. Heavy. Then suddenly, he stepped back. The space between us returned. Air rushed into my lungs again. David exhaled slowly. "Go get some sleep, Lambert." The order surprised me. "You don't need a guard tonight?" "I need quiet." He turned away. Conversation over. But just before I reached the door, he spoke again. "Lambert." I stopped. "Yes." "If you ever decide to tell me the truth." His voice softened. "Make sure it's the whole truth." My hand tightened on the door handle. "Understood." I stepped out into the hallway. The door clicked shut behind me. The moment it closed, my legs felt slightly weaker. That had been too close. Way too close. David didn't know yet. But his instincts were starting to catch the scent of the truth. And if he pushed just a little harder, the entire lie would collapse. I walked slowly down the hallway, past silent guards, past marble floors that echoed softly under my steps, my mind replaying everything that had just happened. The way he inhaled near my neck, the way his fingers tightened around my tie, the way he said I made the noise in his head stop. None of that should matter. None of that should affect me, because my mission was simple. Investigate, confirm, eliminate if necessary. But something had changed tonight. Something small, something dangerous. Because when David stood that close, for one brief second, I didn't want him to step back. And that was the moment I knew this job was starting to compromise me. But the real problem came an hour later. Because that's when the third Alpha died. And this time, the body was found inside David's own territory. Looking back, that was the last normal night in the mansion. Because the next morning someone would try to assassinate David. Inside his own home. And the person pulling the trigger was someone we both trusted. And what happens next is the moment everything changes. Chapter 6. The gunshot sounded wrong. Not loud. Not the explosive crack people imagine. Inside the mansion it came out sharp and flat, like someone snapping a thick wooden board in half. I heard it from the second-floor hallway. And before the echo finished bouncing off the marble walls, I was already running. Adrenaline hits differently when you live inside danger every day. There's no panic. No hesitation. Just movement. My boots hit the floor in quick, silent impacts as I turned the corner toward the west wing. The air already smelled like burned gunpowder. That alone told me everything. Someone had fired inside the house. Which meant one of two things. A guard had lost his mind. Or someone had decided to kill David tonight. I reached the staircase railing and vaulted the last 5 steps instead of running down them. My shoulders slammed the ground harder than I liked, but I was already moving again before the pain registered. Another sound echoed down the hallway. Not a gunshot. A shout. Then the heavy thud of something hitting a wall. My pulse accelerated. David's office. The door at the end of the hall stood half open. Light spilled into the corridor. And someone inside was breathing hard. I slowed. 1 step. 2. Gun drawn now. Safety off. My back pressed against the wall beside the doorway. Another sound came from inside. Fabric shifting. Someone stumbling. I leaned slightly and looked in. The office looked like a storm had passed through. A chair overturned. Glass shattered across the floor near the desk. One of the guards lay against the wall clutching his shoulder, blood soaking through his sleeve. And standing in the center of the room was David. His shirt collar was torn open. His breathing slow. Too slow. But the thing that made my stomach tighten wasn't the damage. It was the smell. His pheromones were flooding the room. Wild. Unstable. Electric. The same scent that had been killing alphas across the city. And standing 5 feet in front of him, holding the gun, was Marcus. David's head of internal security. A man who had served his family for 12 years. Marcus's hands trembled slightly around the weapon. But his eyes were focused. Determined. "Don't move," Marcus said. David didn't. He stood there calmly, watching him. "You're going to lower that gun?" David said quietly. Marcus laughed. It sounded broken. "No." The smell in the room intensified. Even with my suppressants I felt it pressing against my lungs. David's pheromones were escalating again. Marcus must have felt it too. Because his jaw tightened. "See," Marcus said, voice shaking. "There it is again." David's expression didn't change. "You're confused." "I'm not confused," Marcus shouted. The gun lifted slightly higher. 6 alphas dead in 2 months. Every one of them after meeting you. My heart skipped. Marcus knew. Or at least he suspected. David's eyes darkened. "Careful," he said quietly. Marcus laughed again. "You don't even realize it, do you?" Silence. Rain tapped softly against the office windows. The air smelled sharp and metallic. Marcus's voice dropped. "You're killing them." David's gaze sharpened. "I haven't touched anyone." "You don't need to." Marcus took a small step closer. The gun never wavered. "Your father built you to do it." My pulse froze. David's father. That subject rarely came up in this house. David's jaw tightened. "You're crossing a line." "No," Marcus said softly. I'm finally seeing the truth. My finger rested lightly on the trigger of my own weapon outside the door. I could shoot Marcus right now. Cling. Quick. But if I did, everyone would know I'd been standing outside listening. And something about this conversation told me I needed to hear the rest. Marcus exhaled slowly. You think those alphas just lost control randomly? David didn't answer. Marcus continued. I saw the lab reports your father kept hidden. The air in the room changed instantly. David's shoulders stiffened. Marcus, he said quietly. Stop. Marcus ignored him. He experimented on you. The words hung in the room like a dropped knife. Pheromone amplification. My stomach tightened. Evolution through dominance. Marcus's finger tightened slightly on the trigger. You're not a normal alpha. David's voice dropped lower. Put the gun down. You're a weapon. The scent in the room spiked, so violently my lungs burned. Marcus staggered slightly. There it was. The effect. David's unstable pheromones were reacting to the confrontation. Marcus's breathing became uneven, but he forced himself to stay upright. You see it? Marcus rasped. You don't even have to try. David's expression looked colder now, but underneath it, something else flickered. Fear. Not fear of Marcus. Fear of what Marcus might be right about. I would know if I was killing people, David said quietly. Marcus shook his head. No, you wouldn't. His voice cracked slightly. Because every time it happens, you black out. My pulse stopped. That piece of information hit harder than anything else tonight. David's eyes narrowed. You're lying. Marcus swallowed. You think those migraines are normal? The room went still. David's migraines. I had seen them. The sudden headaches. The way he would disappear into dark rooms for hours. At the time I thought it was stress. Now, my chest tightened. Marcus took another shaky breath. The pheromone spikes, the memory gaps. He raised the gun slightly higher. You're not the boss of this family anymore. David's voice went very quiet. And what are you planning to do about it? Marcus didn't hesitate. I'm putting you down before you wipe out every alpha in the city. The gun steadied. The smell in the room thickened dangerously. Marcus's pupils dilated. Sweat beaded on his forehead. David's pheromones were already affecting him. Another 10 seconds. Marcus might lose control completely. My brain ran through the math. If Marcus fired first, David might die. If I shot Marcus, I exposed myself. If I waited, the pheromone surge could trigger something worse. And then Marcus said something that changed everything. You're not even the most dangerous part. David's eyes sharpened. What does that mean? Marcus smiled weakly. Your bodyguard. My blood ran cold. Lambert. David's head snapped toward the door instantly. His instincts had caught the name before his mind did. I stepped inside slowly. Gun already raised. Marcus's eyes flicked toward me. Perfect timing. David's voice cut through the room. Lambert. He sounded surprised, but not relieved. I kept my weapon steady. Put the gun down, Marcus. Marcus laughed. You still pretending to be a beta? The room froze. David's gaze snapped toward me. Sure. Dangerous. What did you say? Marcus grinned. You didn't tell him? My heart hammered against my ribs. Marcus coughed slightly. David's pheromones were clearly affecting him now. But he kept talking anyway. The quiet bodyguard who doesn't react to alpha pheromones. His grin widened. You ever ask yourself why? David's eyes slowly returned to my face. And for the first time, he looked at me like he didn't recognize me. Marcus's voice grew weaker, but the words kept coming. He's not a beta. The silence that followed felt heavier than the gun in my hand. David's gaze darkened. Lambert. My throat felt dry. Not now. Marcus laughed again. That's right. He pointed the gun toward David again. Because the truth is even better. David's voice dropped dangerously low. Marcus. Marcus ignored him. He's an alpha. The air in the room went still. Every guard outside the door must have heard it. But no one moved. Because everyone inside knew. This moment had just changed everything. David's eyes locked onto mine. And for the first time since I met him, I smelled his fear. Not fear of Marcus. Fear of me. Marcus's hand trembled harder now. His body starting to collapse under the pheromone pressure. But he forced out one last sentence. The only alpha whose scent can stabilize you. The words hit like thunder. David blinked once. Slow. Then his eyes returned to my face again. Searching. Trying to see the truth that had been standing in front of him the entire time. Marcus pulled the trigger. The gunshot cracked through the room. But not the way he expected. Because I moved first. And what happened in the next 3 seconds is the moment I keep replaying in my head. Over and over. Because that's when David finally learned what I really was. And once he smelled my real scent, nothing between us would ever be the same again. Stay with me because this next part is the one people always come back to. Chapter 7. The shot never reached David. Because I fired first. The 2 gunshots overlapped so closely they sounded like one violent crack tearing through the office walls. Marcus's body jerked backward. The gun slipped from his hand and clattered across the marble floor. For a second no one moved. The smell of gunpowder spread slowly through the room, sharp and bitter. Marcus staggered once, staring down at the dark bloom spreading across his chest. His mouth opened like he wanted to say something. But nothing came out. Then his knees buckled. He hit the floor hard. The sound echoed. And suddenly the room was silent again. Too silent. I kept my gun raised. Because sometimes people don't die immediately. But Marcus didn't move. Not even a breath. Behind me I heard the distant sound of guards rushing down the hallway. Footsteps. Voices. Chaos beginning to wake up inside the mansion. But inside the office, time had slowed. Because David hadn't looked at Marcus when he fell. He was looking at me. The entire time. My gun lowered slowly. The metallic click of the safety sounded loud in the quiet. I could feel it already. The suppressants were failing. Marcus had forced the truth into the open. My heart rate was too high. Adrenaline burned through my bloodstream. And the chemical barrier holding my scent down was starting to crack. David took one step closer. Just one. His eyes were sharp now. Alert. Predatory. You're an alpha. Not a question. The words felt heavier in the air than Marcus's corpse on the floor. I should have denied it. One last lie. But the smell in the room had already changed. Subtly. Almost impossible for humans to notice. But not for him. David inhaled slowly. And the moment he did, his expression shifted. Just slightly. Recognition. His voice dropped. So that's what it is. My chest tightened. Because that tone wasn't anger. It wasn't betrayal. It was realization. You Comet, he said quietly. The noise. The guards burst into the room then. 4 of them. Weapons raised. They froze immediately when they saw Marcus on the ground. What happened? One of them asked. David didn't look away from me. Marcus betrayed the family. The guard glanced between us. And Lambert. He handled it. That was all. No suspicion. No accusations. Just the quiet authority of a mafia boss ending a conversation. 2 guards moved to Marcus's body. Another checked the injured man against the wall. The 4th stood near the door watching us both. But David still hadn't looked away from me. His eyes were studying me differently now. Like I had become a completely new person in front of him. Everyone out, he said calmly. The guards hesitated. Boss. Out. His voice left no room for argument. They dragged Marcus's body from the room. The injured guard limped out with help. The door closed behind them. And suddenly, it was just us again. The room still smelled like gunpowder. And blood. But under it, my scent was leaking. Not strong. But no longer hidden. David inhaled again slowly. His head tilted slightly. Like someone listening to a sound no one else could hear. Interesting. My jaw tightened. What is? You smell different than other alphas. That wasn't good. Suppressants distort scent patterns. If he noticed that, questions would follow. I take medication, I said evenly. His gaze sharpened. Why? No easy answer to that. Because the truth would explain too much. I stayed quiet. David walked slowly toward the desk. His fingers brushed the edge of it as he leaned against the wood. You've been lying to me since the day you arrived. Yes. The honesty surprised even me. But there wasn't much point pretending now. His eyes narrowed slightly. You're very calm about that. I'm used to it. Another silence settled in the room. Rain tapped softly against the windows again. The storm outside had grown stronger. David rubbed his temples slowly. Like the beginnings of a headache were building there again. You're not just hiding your scent, he said. You're hiding something bigger. I didn't answer, because that part wasn't his business. Not yet. He watched me carefully. You knew about the Alpha deaths. Yes. You suspected me. Yes. You still took a job protecting me. Also yes. The corners of his mouth twitched slightly. That's either very brave. His voice dropped. Or very stupid. Maybe both. Another pause. Then he asked the one question I'd been hoping to avoid. Who sent you? My pulse hit harder. That's classified. His eyes darkened. You work for someone? Yes. Government? Something like that. He exhaled slowly. Processing. You're investigating me? Yes. The honesty surprised him again. But lying now would only make things worse. David walked slowly around the desk. Closer. The scent in the room shifted again. His unstable pheromones were reacting to the conversation. Sure. Electric. My own scent responded instinctively. And the moment it did, something strange happened. David stopped moving. His shoulders relaxed slightly, like tension had just drained from his muscles. There it is again, he murmured. My throat felt tight. What? That quiet. He inhaled slowly. The effect was immediate. His pheromones softened. The violent edge faded. The room felt easier to breathe in. His eyes widened slightly. Unbelievable. He took another step closer. My instincts screamed at me to step back. But I didn't. Because stepping back would confirm the connection. You stabilize me, he said quietly. I don't know how. My voice came out lower than usual. Neither do I. David studied my face carefully. Marcus said my father experimented on me. Yes. You believe that? Yes. He nodded slowly. Do you know what he did? My silence answered that. David exhaled through his nose. That explains the migraines. The tension in my chest tightened. You get them often. 3 or 4 times a month. Memory loss afterward? His eyes snapped to mine. Yes. My stomach dropped. That confirmed Marcus's claim. David rubbed his temple again. Then those men. His voice trailed off. They might have died because of me. Maybe. But not intentionally. No. Another long silence. Rain hammered harder against the windows now. Thunder rolled somewhere far away. David walked toward the window, looking out over the city lights. You know what the funny part is? What? I always thought my father hated me. His voice sounded distant. He pushed me harder than any alpha heir in the city. His fingers tightened slightly against the glass. Turns out he was building something. My chest felt tight. A weapon. Yes. He glanced back at me. And you were sent to kill it. I didn't answer. Because that was the truth. David nodded slowly. That makes sense. Another pause. Then he said something that caught me completely off guard. Are you going to do it? My pulse jumped. What? Kill me? The question hung in the room like a loaded gun. I thought about lying. But something in the way he asked, quiet, honest, made it impossible. If I confirm you're responsible for the deaths, I said slowly. Yes. Then yes. David didn't look angry. He didn't look surprised either. Just thoughtful. Fair. Another pause stretched between us. Then he said quietly, but what if I'm not? I looked at him. What do you mean? What if someone is making me do it? The room felt colder suddenly. You think someone is controlling it? Or triggering it? That thought had crossed my mind earlier. But hearing him say it, made it feel more real. Marcus mentioned lapse, I said. Yes. Your father's research. David's expression hardened. I burned everything when he died. Maybe not everything. He looked back toward Marcus's blood still smeared across the floor. If someone inside my organization is using me, his voice darkened. I want them found. My chest tightened. Because that meant our goals had just aligned. For now. David looked at me again. You're not just a bodyguard anymore, Lambert? No. You're the only person who can stand near me without losing control. Unfortunately, yes. He walked closer again, stopping a few feet away. You realize what that means? I did. But hearing him say it would make things more complicated. It means, he said quietly, I need you. Those words landed heavier than they should have. Not because of what they meant, but because of how he said them. Come. Honest. Without pride. And something inside my chest reacted to that in a way I didn't like. David tilted his head slightly, studying me again. You're not afraid of me? No. But you should be. Probably. He nodded once, then glanced toward the door. Because the person who tried to kill me tonight. His voice dropped. Isn't the real enemy. My pulse tightened. You think Marcus was working for someone? I know he was. How? David looked back at me. Cold. Focused. Because Marcus wasn't smart enough to figure all of this out alone. The realization settled heavily in my chest. Someone inside the Mafia had been feeding him information. Someone who knew about David's mutations. Someone who knew about the Alpha deaths. Someone powerful enough to move inside the organization without being noticed. David's voice grew quieter. There's a traitor in my family. And if that person discovered what I really was, or why I was here, this mansion would become the most dangerous place in the city. Because the moment that traitor realizes David's stability depends on my scent, they won't try to kill him anymore. They'll try to remove me. And that realization is the moment the real hunt begins. What comes next? I still can't believe it happened to me. Chapter 8. I didn't sleep that night. Not even for a minute. The mansion looked calm from the outside. Lights dim. Guards moving through their usual routes. Rain washing the blood off the front steps like nothing had happened. But inside the walls something had changed. The house felt watchful. Like every corridor had eyes now. Marcus had been head of security. If someone inside the organization turned him into an assassin, that meant two things. First, there was a traitor. Second, whoever that traitor was had access to information that should have been impossible to obtain. And the third realization was the one that kept replaying in my head. Marcus knew what David was, which meant someone had opened the door to the past David thought he burned. And that past was still alive somewhere. I stood outside David's study just before dawn. The hallway lights were dim. A single chandelier humming faintly overhead. The mansion smelled like old wood and rain. But underneath it, I could still smell the lingering trace of David's unstable pheromones. Even hours later. That was new. Usually the spikes burned out quickly. Tonight the scent was lingering, which meant his body had been pushed harder than usual. My phone vibrated quietly in my pocket. I answered immediately. Report. Director Hale's voice came through the line. You're still alive. Barely. You didn't warn me Marcus had flipped. I didn't know. Silence. Then. You exposed yourself. I leaned against the wall slowly. He forced it. You confirmed you're an alpha in front of David? Yes. Hale exhaled sharply. That complicates things. Everything is already complicated. Another pause. Did he react violently? No. That's surprising. Not to me. Because I had seen the moment his pheromones calmed when my scent leaked. He needed me. And David knew it. He knows about the investigation? Hale asked. Not the details. But he knows you're watching him. Yes. Another silence stretched between us. Then Hale said quietly, that might actually work in our favor. How? If David thinks you're the only one who can stabilize him. My stomach tightened. He'll keep you close. Exactly. And that meant the mission had just entered a much more dangerous stage. Marcus mentioned your father's research, Hale said. Yes. We've been digging. And? The answer took a moment. Then. You need to hear this in person. I don't have time for suspense. Hale's voice dropped. David's father wasn't experimenting on pheromone amplification. My pulse slowed slightly. What was he doing? Evolution. The word sat heavy in my ear. Explain. We found fragments of medical records your boss's father tried to destroy. And? Lambert, he wasn't trying to create a stronger alpha. A quiet pause. He was trying to create something beyond alpha. My chest tightened. What does that mean? Hale spoke carefully. In Omegaverse biology, alphas dominate omegas. Yes. But what if something could dominate alphas? The hallway suddenly felt colder. You're talking about pheromone hierarchy. Yes. But not normal hierarchy. Hale exhaled slowly. David may be the first recorded case of what researchers called a devouring alpha. The words made my spine stiffen. I had heard that term before. Not in official documents. In whispered discussions inside the organization. A theoretical mutation. A predator in the pheromone food chain. A biological anomaly capable of overwhelming other alphas. Destroying their nervous systems. Driving them insane. Those alphas didn't die randomly, Hale continued. They were chemically triggered. Yes. But the reaction came from David's pheromones interacting with their own. I closed my eyes briefly. That's why they went insane. Yes. And the injections? Likely concentrated samples of his pheromones. Someone inside the Mafia was stealing David's scent. Turning it into a weapon. Using him to eliminate rival alpha families. A quiet storm started building in my chest. Because this was bigger than Mafia politics now. If the devouring alpha mutation was real, and someone had figured out how to weaponize it, they wouldn't stop at the criminal world. You understand the risk, Hale said quietly. Yes. If David loses control completely, every alpha in the city could collapse. And if someone distributes those pheromone injections widely. I finished the sentence. You get biological warfare. Silence confirmed it. Then Hale said something that made the back of my neck prickle. There's another part. Of course there is. In the original research notes. His voice lowered. The devouring alpha wasn't supposed to exist alone. My pulse slowed. What do you mean? There was a stabilizer. The word landed like a stone dropping into water. My chest tightened immediately. Explain. The research suggested that if a devouring alpha evolved. Hale paused. He would require a counterbalance. My mouth felt dry. A second alpha. Silence. Not just any alpha. A rare genetic match. Someone whose pheromones could neutralize the mutation. My fingers tightened around the phone. That's theoretical. Not anymore. The hallway seemed to tilt slightly around me. You think I'm that stabilizer? Hale didn't answer right away. But I already knew. You noticed it yourself, he said finally. David calms down when you're near. Yes. He sleeps easier. Yes. His pheromone spikes stabilize. Yes. My chest tightened harder. That's coincidence. No. Hale's voice turned serious. We ran your genetic file against the fragments of his father's research. The blood drained slowly from my face. Lambert, you're the exact match the research predicted. For a moment I couldn't breathe. Because that meant my assignment wasn't random. The organization didn't just send an investigator. They sent the only alpha capable of controlling him. Which meant they always expected me to get close. To stay close. And eventually, to make the final decision. My voice came out quieter than I intended. You knew this before you sent me. Yes. Anger sparked under my ribs. You didn't think that was important to mention? You would have refused the mission. He wasn't wrong. Because if I had known I was biologically tied to the man I was supposed to judge, I would have walked away. Immediately. Lambert, Hale said carefully. You still have the same objective. Investigate. Confirm. Eliminate if necessary. But now the equation had changed. Because eliminating David might trigger something worse. The devouring alpha mutation might destabilize completely. And if that happened, every alpha near him could die. You're the only thing keeping him balanced, Hale continued. That makes you valuable. Or disposable. I knew how organizations like ours worked. If the situation escalated, they would remove both of us. The phone call ended shortly after that. No comfort. No reassurance. Just the quiet understanding that my life had just become a strategic asset. I slipped the phone back into my pocket. And that's when I realized I wasn't alone in the hallway anymore. David stood 10 feet away, watching me. My pulse slammed once. Art, how long have you been there? Long enough. The words felt heavier in the air than they should. David walked closer slowly, barefoot, shirt sleeves rolled. His hair slightly messy like he hadn't slept either. You were talking about me. Not a question. Yes. What did you learn? The truth hovered in my throat. But something told me hiding it now would only make things worse. You're not just an alpha. His eyes narrowed slightly. I figured that part out. You're something called a devouring alpha. The silence stretched between us. David didn't laugh. He didn't argue. He just absorbed the words slowly. Sounds dramatic. It's dangerous. His gaze sharpened. How dangerous. Potentially catastrophic. A long breath left his chest. Good to know. Then he asked quietly. And you? My stomach tightened. What about me? What role do you play in this little nightmare? I hesitated. But David noticed. He always noticed. You're the stabilizer. The words hung between us. His eyes widened slightly. Then slowly, something in his expression shifted. Understanding. You're the reason it quiets. Yes. He stepped closer. The scent in the hallway shifted instantly. My own pheromones reacted instinctively. And just like before, his calmed. David inhaled slowly, almost experimentally. Then again, the violent tension in the air faded. His shoulders relaxed slightly. That's unbelievable. My voice stayed quiet. It also makes me a target. His eyes darkened immediately. Yes. Because anyone trying to weaponize him would eventually realize the one thing preventing total chaos was me. David leaned closer. Not touching. Just close enough that the warmth of his body reached my skin. You realize what that means? What? If someone wants to control me? His voice dropped lower. They have to remove you first. Exactly. Which meant the traitor inside his organization had just gained a new objective. Find the stabilizing alpha. And eliminate him. David's eyes studied my face carefully. You're not leaving. It wasn't a request. No. Good. Then he said something that made the air between us tighten. Because whoever is doing this. His voice turned cold. Is already watching us. My pulse stuttered. What makes you say that? David's eyes flicked toward the security camera in the corner of the hallway. Then back to me. Marcus didn't discover the truth by himself. No. And whoever told him. His voice lowered further. Now knows you're the only alpha who can stand beside me without dying. Which meant something terrifying. The hunter inside the mansion had just found a new target. And this time, the person they wanted dead was me. And what happened later that same night proved they were already moving. Because someone tried to poison me. Inside David's own dining room. And the person who served the wine was someone I trusted. I should have left then. I didn't. And that decision is the one that nearly got both of us killed. And what comes next? I still can't believe it happened to me. Chapter 9. Looking back, the warning signs were everywhere. I just didn't see them fast enough. That's the problem with living inside a system of lies. Eventually you start believing the parts that feel safe. Dinner that night should have been routine. Quiet. Controlled. The mansion had returned to its usual rhythm after Marcus's death. Guards rotated. Staff whispered in corners. The official story was already spreading through the organization. Marcus betrayed the family and paid the price. Simple. Clean. But nothing inside this house was simple anymore. Because somewhere inside these walls, someone was still turning David into a weapon. And now they knew exactly who I was. The dining room lights were warm and low when I entered. Long table. Dark wood. Crystal glasses arranged perfectly like soldiers waiting for inspection. David was already there. Sitting at the far end. One elbow resting on the table, fingers lightly touching his temple. The faint crease between his brows told me the migraine was starting again. The room smelled faintly like roasted garlic and red wine. But underneath that, his pheromones were unstable again. Not violent. Just restless. I took the chair to his right. Close enough that our shoulders almost lined up across the long table. Close enough for my scent to reach him. Within seconds his breathing slowed. He noticed. Of course he noticed. His eyes slid toward me. You're becoming a very expensive medical treatment. Send the bill to your father. That earned a faint huff of amusement. But the humor didn't last long. The house staff moved quietly around us. 2 servants placing plates. Another pouring wine. The clink of crystal against glass sounded sharp in the quiet room. David watched them carefully. He had always been observant. But tonight, his eyes followed every movement. Because now he knew there was a traitor inside his house. And everyone was a suspect. The servant pouring my wine was a woman named Elena. Late 30s. Worked here for almost 7 years. Never caused problems. Never drew attention. Which meant she was exactly the kind of person a conspiracy could hide behind. She poured my glass first. Then David's. The dark red liquid caught the chandelier light like blood. I thanked her with a nod. She left quietly. The door closed behind her with a soft click, and the room fell silent again. David didn't touch his food. He rarely did when the headache started. Instead, he watched me. You look distracted. Occupational hazard. Thinking about the traitor? Yes. So am I. His fingers tapped lightly against the table once. Then again. I reviewed Marcus's financial records this afternoon. And? He was receiving money. My pulse slowed slightly. From where? Anonymous transfers. Amount? Enough to betray a family. That didn't surprise me. Someone bought him. Yes. But that someone wasn't stupid. David leaned back slightly in his chair. Because the payment started 6 months ago. My stomach tightened. 6 months? That lined up perfectly with the first Alpha death. Long-term planning, I said. Yes. Which means the traitor inside your organization is patient. David's eyes darkened slightly. And powerful. Silence returned. The rain outside had stopped. The windows reflected the warm dining room lights back at us. My hand reached for the wine glass without thinking. The crystal felt cool against my fingers. I lifted it slightly. And that's when something in my instincts screamed. Not loud. Not dramatic. Just a quiet, cold warning in the back of my head. I froze. The glass halfway to my lips. David noticed immediately. What is it? I didn't answer right away. Instead, I looked at the wine. Dark. Still. Normal. But the smell. Something about it felt wrong. Not obvious. Not chemical. Just slightly off. My stomach tightened slowly. Lambert. I lowered the glass. Did Elena pour both glasses from the same bottle? Yes. David glanced at his untouched wine. Then back at me. You think it's poisoned? I don't know yet. He picked up his own glass calmly. Let's find out. Before I could stop him, he tilted it toward his mouth. Don't. But he didn't drink. Instead, he held the glass close to his nose, inhaling slowly. Then again. His brow creased slightly. Bitter almond. My pulse dropped. Cyanide. David lowered the glass slowly. The crystal touched the table with a soft sound. Interesting. My voice stayed flat. You're remarkably calm about attempted murder. Not the first time. He stood. The chair legs scraped softly across the floor. His voice turned colder. Stay here. Bad idea. I don't want you collapsing in the hallway if you're wrong. I didn't drink it. You almost did. His gaze lingered on me for a moment. Then he walked toward the door. The moment his scent moved away from me, the room changed again. His pheromones sharpened. Unstable. But he didn't seem to notice. He opened the door. 2 guards immediately straightened outside. Bring Elena to me, David said calmly. Yes, boss. They moved quickly down the hallway. David returned to the table. But he didn't sit. Instead, he stood behind my chair. Close. Too close. My chest tightened slightly. You're lucky, he said quietly. Lucky people don't last long in my profession. His hand rested lightly on the back of my chair. Not touching me, but close enough that I could feel the warmth through the wood. Your instincts saved you. Not instincts. What then? Habit. Poisoning was an old trick in mafia houses, but it was usually directed at the boss, not the bodyguard, which meant something had changed in the enemy's priorities. They weren't trying to kill David tonight. They were trying to remove me. The door opened again 5 minutes later. Elena walked in. 2 guards behind her. She looked confused, but not afraid. That alone made my stomach tighten. David gestured toward the table. Sit. She obeyed slowly, hands folded in her lap. Her eyes flicked briefly toward the untouched wine glasses. Then back to David. Yes, sir? David didn't speak immediately. He simply picked up the wine bottle and poured another glass. The red liquid flowed slowly, quietly. Then he placed the glass in front of her. Drink. Elena blinked, confused. Sir? Drink it. Her hands trembled slightly. Is there something wrong? David's voice stayed calm. I'd like to know the same thing. Silence filled the room. The guards behind her shifted slightly, waiting. Elena looked at the glass again, then back at David. Her breathing grew uneven. Sir. David's eyes hardened. Drink. She didn't move. That was all the confirmation we needed. David leaned slightly forward. His voice dropped. Who gave it to you? Tears filled her eyes instantly. I didn't know. Who? Her shoulders shook. I swear I didn't know. My pulse slowed. She wasn't lying. She was terrified. Someone told you to serve this bottle? I said quietly. Her head snapped toward me. Yes. Who? Her lips trembled. I don't know his name. That made my chest tighten. Describe him. She swallowed hard. Tall, dark hair, one of the new security staff. David's expression darkened instantly. Because David hadn't hired new security staff recently. Which meant someone else inside the organization had. Where is he now? David asked. I don't know. Her voice cracked. He gave me the bottle an hour ago. David turned toward the guards. Locked down the mansion. The order moved like lightning. Radios crackled. Footsteps echoed down the hallway. But even as the search began, my stomach sank. Because the person behind this wasn't stupid. They wouldn't still be inside. Which meant the poison wasn't the real plan. It was a test. To see if David would protect me. Or let me die. David looked down at the wine glass again. Then back at me. They're moving faster now. Yes. Which means we're close. Yes. Close to something. But not the truth yet. Because the person orchestrating this was still several steps ahead. And I realized that the moment my phone vibrated again. Another message from Director Hale. Just 3 words. Get out now. My blood ran cold. Because Hale never panicked. Not ever. And if he was telling me to run, that meant something catastrophic had just been discovered. I opened the message. And the photo attached to it made my entire body go still. Because it showed the real mastermind behind everything. The man controlling the pheromone killings. The man who ordered the poison tonight. The man who had been standing beside David this entire time. His own uncle. The second in command of the Mafia family. Which meant the enemy wasn't just inside the mansion. He was sitting at the very top of it. And the moment David finds out who betrayed him, this house is going to become a war zone. And the choice I have to make next is the one that will destroy one of us forever. He didn't know it yet, but the next scene would cost him everything. Chapter 10. The message from Hale burned on my phone screen. 3 words. Get out now. And the photo underneath it. I stared at it for a full second before my brain caught up. Then my stomach dropped. Because the man in that photo wasn't a stranger. He wasn't some hidden enemy buried deep in the Mafia structure. He was someone I had seen almost every day since I entered this house. Someone who walked through the mansion like he owned it. Someone David trusted. His uncle, Victor Hale. Second in command of the entire crime family. The man who helped raise David after his father died. The man who had been standing right beside him while alphas across the city were dying. The realization felt like cold metal sliding into my ribs. Because if Hale was right, then this entire war had been engineered from inside the family itself. I lowered the phone slowly. David was watching me. His eyes were sharp. You just saw something. Yes. What? I hesitated. For half a second. Because saying the name out loud would detonate everything. But hiding it would only make the explosion worse later. Your uncle. The silence that followed felt heavier than the gun Marcus had held earlier. David didn't blink. Didn't move. But something inside his expression shifted. Explain. I turned the phone toward him. He took it. His eyes scanned the image once. Then again. The room felt colder. Because the man in the photo wasn't just Victor Hale. He was standing in a laboratory. Medical equipment. Chemical containers. Rows of refrigerated vials. And written clearly across the labels. D-sample series. Devouring Alpha. David's jaw tightened slowly. Where did you get this? My handler. He stared at the image longer. Then handed the phone back. His voice came out quieter. Leave. The word hit like a brick. What? Leave the mansion. I'm not going anywhere. David's eyes hardened. That wasn't a suggestion. My pulse thudded once. You think I'm walking away now? Yes. No. The word left my mouth before I even thought about it. David stared at me. Long. Art. You just learned my uncle is behind the Alpha killings. Yes. And you want to stay in the house with him? Yes. He rubbed his temples slowly. The migraine was getting worse. I can't protect you from him. I'm not here for protection. I know. His voice dropped slightly. You're here to decide if I deserve to live. Silence filled the room again. I didn't deny it. Because that was the truth. David exhaled slowly. Then he said something that surprised me. Then stay. My chest tightened slightly. But understand something, Lambert? What? If my uncle really did this? His voice grew colder. I won't hesitate. The words hung in the air like a drawn blade. Because mafia families don't forgive betrayal. Not even from blood. A loud knock interrupted us. The door opened before either of us could respond. Victor Hale stepped inside. Tall. Gray hair at the temples. Expensive suit. Calm expression. He looked exactly the same as he had every other day. Which made the photo on my phone feel even more surreal. David, he said smoothly. I heard about the incident with Marcus. His eyes moved toward me briefly. Then back to David. Unfortunate situation. David's expression didn't change. Yes. Victor walked further into the room. His shoes made soft sounds against the marble floor. Marcus always was unstable. He glanced toward the wine glasses on the table. Then the untouched plates. You haven't eaten. Lost my appetite. Victor chuckled lightly. Danger tends to do that. My instinct screamed. Everything about this man suddenly felt wrong. Not obvious. Not aggressive. Too controlled. Too careful. Victor turned slightly toward me. Lambert. Yes. You handled Marcus well. Part of the job. Indeed. His eyes lingered on me a moment longer than necessary. Then he turned back to David. The security team is searching the grounds. Yes. I assume Marcus didn't act alone. No. Victor nodded thoughtfully. That's troubling. Then his gaze shifted again. This time slower. Studying me. Interesting development tonight. David's voice stayed calm. What development? Victor smiled faintly. Your bodyguard. My muscles tightened. David didn't react. What about him? Victor's eyes never left me. I've worked around alphas my entire life. My pulse slowed. And Lambert doesn't smell like a beta. The room went quiet. David leaned back slightly in his chair. No. Victor's smile widened slightly. He smells like something else. My heart hit harder. Because if Victor already suspected, then the poison tonight had probably been his test. David spoke calmly. He's an alpha. Victor blinked. Just once. Not surprised. More amused. Well? His gaze sharpened. That explains quite a lot. David watched him carefully. What exactly does it explain? Victor folded his hands behind his back. Why your episodes calm down when he's near? My pulse dropped. You knew. Not suspected. No. You've been studying me, David said quietly. Victor smiled again. Your father asked me to. The room felt like it tilted slightly. You're lying. No. Victor's voice stayed smooth. Your father trusted very few people. He stepped closer to the table. And when he began the Devouring Alpha project, my lungs tightened. I was the only one he allowed to assist. David's expression hardened. You told me those experiments were destroyed. They were. Victor's smile faded slightly. But the results survived. He looked directly at me now. And here he is. My fingers curled slightly. You were waiting for me? Yes. Why? Victor's eyes gleamed faintly. Because the Devouring Alpha was never meant to exist alone. The same words Hale used earlier. My chest tightened. The stabilizer, I said. Victor nodded slowly. Exactly. David's voice dropped dangerously low. You've been killing alphas. Victor didn't deny it. They were obsolete. The casual tone made my stomach twist. Your father believed the future of power belonged to one superior alpha. He gestured toward David. But a devouring alpha requires dominance over the entire hierarchy. My pulse slowed. So you removed the competition? Yes. Using his pheromones? Yes. David's hand slowly clenched. You turned me into a weapon. Victor shrugged slightly. You already were. Silence filled the dining room. Heavy. Electric. Then David asked quietly, and the poison tonight? Victor's eyes flicked toward me again. A precaution. Against him. Yes. David leaned forward slightly. Why? Victor's voice softened. Because once the stabilizer bonds to the devouring alpha. My stomach dropped. The hierarchy becomes permanent. David's eyes sharpened. Bond? Victor nodded. A biological pairing. The word felt heavier than anything else tonight. If Lambert stays beside you long enough. Victor continued calmly. Your pheromone system will permanently synchronize. My chest tightened. And then? Victor smiled faintly. Then you become unstoppable. The realization hit both of us at the same time. That's why he wanted me dead. Because once the bond formed, he couldn't control David anymore. David stood slowly. The chair scraped across the floor. You're finished here. Victor sighed. You always were stubborn. His hand moved toward his jacket. Too fast. My gun was already up. But Victor was faster. The pistol appeared in his hand like a magician's trick. He fired once. The shot exploded through the room. But not at David. At me. Pain tore across my shoulder as the bullet grazed through flesh. The force knocked me backward against the table. Crystal shattered across the floor. David moved instantly. His pheromones erupted into the room like a storm breaking open. Violent. Predatory. Victor staggered slightly. His pupils dilated. You see, he gasped. You can't control it. But he was wrong. Because my scent was already filling the air. Stabilizing him. David's eyes locked onto Victor. Cold. Focused. You tried to kill him. Victor smiled weakly. He was ruining everything. David stepped forward slowly. And in that moment, I understood something terrifying. The devouring alpha wasn't just a theory. It was standing in front of me. And it was furious. Victor raised the gun again. But David moved faster. The shot went wide. The gun clattered across the floor. And David's hand closed around his uncle's throat. The silence that followed felt endless. Victor's face turned red. You need me, he choked. No. David's voice sounded colder than anything I had ever heard. I don't. His fingers tightened. Victor's body went limp seconds later. The room went quiet again. David released him slowly. The body hit the floor. I forced myself upright. My shoulder burned. Blood soaked into my shirt. David turned toward me immediately. His expression changed instantly. Concern replacing the cold violence. You're hurt. I'll live. He stepped closer. Too close. His scent wrapped around me again. But this time, it didn't feel unstable. Felt focused. My chest tightened. Victor said something before he died. I said quietly. Yes. The bond? David didn't answer right away. But his eyes stayed on mine. That happens, he said slowly. If you stay. The words hung between us. Heavy. Because we both understood what that meant. If I stayed, I would no longer be his bodyguard. Or his judge. I would become the one person in the world biologically tied to him. And that kind of connection doesn't break easily. My phone buzzed again in my pocket. Another message from Hale. Just one sentence this time. Mission complete. Eliminate the subject immediately. My chest tightened. Because the organization still saw David as a threat. And according to my orders, the man standing in front of me was supposed to die tonight. David studied my face carefully. You just received new instructions. Yes. Let me guess. His voice dropped slightly. They want you to finish the job. Silence answered him. David exhaled slowly, then stepped closer. Close enough that his breath brushed the side of my neck again. If you're going to do it, he said quietly, do it now. My hands slowly tightened around the gun. Because this was the moment. The point of no return. The moment the entire story had been building toward. And the choice I made in the next few seconds destroyed my entire life. What he did next destroyed my entire life. Subscribe. Because the next story starts where this one broke.